If you're watching this video right now, it's not by accident. You're here because you're stepping into a new level of confidence and responsibility. Imagine this. A state agency or a high-ranking official suddenly comes to you, insisting they urgently need your signature, claiming nothing can move forward without your approval. They say powerful figures are waiting on you because extremely sensitive documents, let's call them the Epstein files, a fictional set of classified records, are at risk of being revealed, containing hidden global operations involving major names and institutions. They warn that if this information gets out, it could shake entire countries. Now, they're pressuring you, saying they'll do anything to get your signature. But here's the message. This scenario reflects the power you already carry. You are stronger, smarter, and more capable than you realize. And when life demands your confidence, you must rise to the moment. Before we go deeper into this mindset shift, pause this video, hit the like button, subscribe to help us reach 5,000 subscribers, and drop the number 11 in the comments to show you're ready to take control of your life. They don't come to you out of courtesy. They come because every other door has slammed in their face. When power knocks last, it's because it has nowhere left to go, no one left to persuade, and nothing left to control. That knock is the sound of a system realizing it miscalculated the very person it once overlooked. And in that moment, their authority suddenly feels a lot smaller than their fear. You open the door, not as a follower, not as a bystander, but as the one person they can't predict. They expected resistance, but not clarity. They expected hesitation, but not the kind of calm that rattles men who are used to giving orders. Power expected you to be impressed by its presence, yet here you are, unimpressed, unmoved, and undeniably in control. This is the moment you realize something. When power comes to you with shaking hands, it's not opportunity, it's confirmation. Confirmation that you've become the card they can't play without. And that shift isn't luck. That shift is earned. They can imitate your voice, your mannerisms, your decisions, but they can't forge your authority. Your signature has become a trigger, a doorway, a decisive force they can't replicate, no matter how much pressure they apply. In a world built on documents and approvals, your name has turned into a blade, sharp enough to cut through their panic. Their desperation to obtain your signature is proof of how far they've fallen from control. They never imagined needing your consent. They never imagined your refusal could corner them. Yet, here they are, standing in front of you like students, waiting for a verdict from the one person whose judgment actually counts. In their eyes, your signature is a solution, but to you, it's something far greater. It's leverage, and leverage in the right hands is more powerful than any title, any badge, any government seal. You were supposed to be the quiet piece on the board, the one they could move without resistance, but then something shifted. Your choices started carrying weight. Your silence became a threat, and your understanding of the situation outgrew their expectations. Suddenly, you weren't a pawn. You were the leverage. The moment they walked into that room and saw your expression, they realized it. They realized you weren't intimidated. You were evaluating. You weren't overwhelmed. You were calculating. And nothing terrifies those in power more than someone who sees through the performance they rely on. You didn't ask for influence, but you earned it through clarity, resilience, and the refusal to be manipulated. That's why you hold leverage. They built a system of fear, and you learned how to stand without it. Those files, fictional or not, represent every secret they hoped would stay buried forever. But it's not the files that scare them. It's who they might empower. And right now, that person is you. They fear the potential in your hands more than the consequences on paper. You hold a kind of control they can't negotiate with. It's not inherited, not given, not borrowed. It's earned through the strength of seeing truth without flinching. You see what they fear, and you understand why they fear it. That insight alone gives you an advantage. Their entire strategy now revolves around your reaction. Their future depends on whether you decide to shield them, expose them, or walk away entirely. That is the kind of control people spend lifetimes chasing, yet it came to you because you were willing to face what others refused to acknowledge. When he walked in, he carried authority on his badge, but fear in his eyes. And fear, real fear, is impossible to hide. It's the kind that trembles, not in the hands, but in the voice. The kind that slips through even the strongest posture. You saw immediately that his confidence was a costume. The way he sat, the way he spoke too fast, the way he avoided your gaze. It all told a story he never intended to reveal. He wasn't there to negotiate. He was there to plead. That's when you understood the real situation. This wasn't a meeting between a government representative and a civilian. This was a man drowning in consequences, clinging to the hope that you might throw him a lifeline. But you don't respond to panic. You respond to truth. And truth was the one thing he didn't come prepared for. All their strategies, all their protocols, all their rehearsed speeches fall apart the moment they face someone who thinks independently. You're the variable they never accounted for, the one factor that doesn't follow their formulas. You know at the moment their composure cracks, even if just for a second. Their plan relied on predictability, but you're not predictable. Your decisions come from clarity, not fear, from strength, not desperation. And as they struggle to regain control of the conversation, you finally grasp the truth. You are the unknown, in an equation they can no longer solve. And nothing dismantles power faster than unpredictability. If they didn't need you, they wouldn't have come. They wouldn't have lowered their pride, broken their routines, or stepped outside their fortified comfort zones. Their presence alone proves your importance. Meanwhile, you lose nothing by refusing. Nothing collapses for you. Nothing threatens your stability. That's the kind of power that shifts the dynamic of any negotiation. When one person has everything to lose and the other has everything to decide, they want you to think they're doing you a favor. But the truth is the opposite. You're the one holding the favor they can't function without. That realization changes everything, including the way you look at yourself. Pressure doesn't come to the powerless. It comes to the ones who matter. The weight you feel isn't a burden. It's evidence. Evidence that your influence is real, recognized, and impossible to replace. Every attempt they make to rush you, convince you, overwhelm you, is proof that you hold the upper hand. They want to make you think you're cornered, but in reality, pressure only confirms that they're the ones running out of time. Most people mistake pressure for danger, but you've learned to recognize it for what it truly is: validation. If they're pushing this hard, it means you hold something worth pushing for. While their secrets crumble under the threat of exposure, your silence stands stronger than any force they can muster. Silence isn't weakness. It's strategy. It's control. It's a reminder that the power to act, or not, is entirely yours. They watch you closely, waiting for hints, waiting for answers, waiting for you to reveal your intentions. But you reveal nothing, and that nothing becomes everything. It becomes the most powerful move in the room. Your silence leaves them vulnerable. It leaves them guessing, and in that uncertainty, you take back every ounce of control they ever tried to claim over you. Desperation has a smell, a posture, a rhythm. You can feel it before a single word is spoken. And when they walked into the room, it arrived with them, heavy, frantic, undeniable. Their desperation isn't just about the files. It's about losing the illusion of control they've held for so long. They're not afraid of exposure. They're afraid of irrelevance. They're afraid of losing the power they've built their entire identity around. But you're not desperate. You're not rushing. You're not pleading. And that difference is what turns the entire room in your favor. You're the calm in the chaos. The one thing desperation can't manipulate. It's strange, almost unbelievable, how quickly roles reverse. A system built by thousands now leans entirely on one person, you. They never thought their stability would rest in the hands of someone they underestimated. You didn't ask for the responsibility, but you're capable of handling it. And capability is what separates leaders from the ones who merely claim leadership. While they crumble under pressure, you remain grounded, clear-headed, decisive. Their stability depends on you not because they chose it, but because you earned it. And that truth changes the balance of power more than any file, document, or signature ever could. Whatever you choose next won't be a ripple. It'll be an earthquake. They know it. You know it. That's why they tread carefully, choosing every word with caution, watching every shift in your expression. Your decision has the potential to redraw boundaries they thought were permanent. They brace for impact, not because they expect you to destroy them, but because they finally understand the scale of your influence. And that influence isn't accidental. It's built from strength, clarity, and the refusal to fold under pressure. You've become the epicenter of their reality, and your next move could shake everything they once believed untouchable. Their rules, their power, their demands, they all stop the moment they reach your signature. That pen in your hand is more than a writing tool. It's a boundary, a reminder that authority doesn't dictate your choices. You do. No badge can force your hand. No title can override your judgment. They've spent their careers commanding others, but your pen is the one place they have no command at all. That small line of ink they're begging for is the exact point where their authority collapses and your control begins. And they know it. They thought keeping you uninformed would keep you powerless. They thought withholding the truth would keep you manageable. But secrets have a strange habit of uncovering themselves at the worst possible time for the ones who hide them. Now that you see the truth, you carry the power they hoped you'd never touch. Not because you're dangerous, but because you're awake. Awareness is the kind of power no institution can control. They tried to hide power for themselves. Instead, they handed it to you. In the end, the entire situation narrows down to one truth. You don't sign out of pressure, fear, or persuasion. You sign only if it aligns with your judgment, your principles, and your decision, not theirs. Your choice is not an obligation. It's an act of ownership. Ownership over your influence, your authority, and your future. They can demand, plead, threaten, but none of it matters. The decision is yours alone. And that is the ultimate form of power. Not the ability to control others, but the ability to choose your own direction when the world tries to choose for you. There comes a moment when the people who once tried to direct your path suddenly halt, stunned, because the version of you standing before them is nothing like the one they remember. You're no longer quiet, no longer easy to guide, no longer someone they can push into compliance with a raised voice or a strategic threat. You've become something they never prepared for, independent in a way that shatters their entire strategy. And the fear that flashes across their faces is the most honest thing they've shown you yet. They speak softer now, as if you're a storm they're trying not to provoke. They measure their words like a gambler counting their last chips. They know they've lost the ability to shape your decisions, and the realization forces them into an unfamiliar posture: respect. true respect, the kind they never intended to give you, but now must, simply because they can't survive the alternative. And in that silence, you finally understand. Control was never about strength. It was about illusion. And the moment you stop believing in that illusion, their grip dissolved. What remains is your power, raw and undeniable, echoing through a room suddenly too small for the person you've become. You don't need to raise your volume. You don't need to threaten anyone. You don't need to assert dominance. All you have to do is speak calmly, and their voices tremble in response. That trembling isn't weakness. It's acknowledgement, a recognition that something about you has changed so dramatically they can no longer predict how you'll move, what you'll choose, or whether you'll tolerate their games. People in positions of authority aren't used to feeling powerless. They're used to their words shaping the room, bending the air, commanding attention. But when they speak to you, that confidence falters. The mask slips. And beneath it, there's a very human, very raw fear. Fear of losing control. Fear of consequences. Fear of being exposed by someone they underestimated. That fear gives you leverage they never meant to hand over. It flips the balance entirely. Now, every word you say becomes a decision point. Every second you stay silent becomes pressure they can't escape. You're not intimidating them on purpose. Your strength simply leaves them with nowhere to hide. You spent years following rules written by people who assumed you'd never question them. You walked the path they laid out, thinking it was the only one available. But the moment you stepped off that path, quietly, confidently, deliberately, the entire game changed. Not because you broke their rules, but because you realized their rules were never designed for your success in the first place. The shift wasn't dramatic. It wasn't loud. It happened the moment you made a decision for yourself, not for approval. And suddenly, everything they once used to control you, fear, doubt, pressure, lost its power. You weren't resisting them. You were simply refusing to be moved. And nothing terrifies controlling people more than someone who won't react. Now the roles reverse. They watch you. They follow you. They adjust to you. Because when you stop playing their game, they lose their only source of certainty. And without certainty, their power folds like paper. Calmness isn't weakness. It's precision. It's the ability to think while others panic, to observe while others overreact, to hold your ground while others scramble for control. And the moment they realize your calm isn't fear but strength, everything inside them tightens. They expect anger. They expect defensiveness. They expect emotional reactions that give them leverage. But your calm denies them all of that. It forces them to confront themselves, their intentions, their mistakes. And confronting themselves is something they've avoided their entire lives. Your calmness becomes a mirror, and what they see in that mirror frightens them. Because for the first time, they're not dominating the room. They're standing in front of someone who doesn't bend, doesn't rush, and doesn't break. Someone who knows their worth. They entered the room assuming they held all the cards. They spoke with confidence, moved with authority, acted like they were untouchable. But somewhere between their first sentence and your first reaction, the ground shifted beneath them. It was subtle, almost invisible, yet undeniable. Their certainty cracked, and your presence filled the space they once controlled. They didn't see it coming because they never imagined you could grow this far, this fast, this strong. Their oversight is your advantage. Their arrogance is your weapon. They built a hierarchy that placed them higher, and now they're living the consequences of their own miscalculation. By the time they realize what happened, it's too late. You're not beneath them. You're not beside them. You're ahead, and they're scrambling to keep up with a reality that no longer revolves around their authority, but around your choices. Every system, every organization, every group has pressure points, places where decisions bottleneck, where influence concentrates, where power gathers. You have become one of those points, not because they intended it, but because you earned it through resilience, intelligence, and unshakable presence. They can override anyone else. They can replace anyone else. They can silence anyone else, but not you, and they know it. That's why they tread carefully around you, why they measure every request, why they speak with caution rather than command. You've become the immovable object in their line of force. Being irreplaceable wasn't something you sought, but now that you are, it changes everything. Their authority may be wide, but your influence is deep, and depth wins every time. People who fear losing power often prepare for conflict. They rehearse arguments, build strategies, plan manipulations. But when they face you, all those preparations collapse. Because you're not fighting, you're not reacting, you're not engaging in the chaos they brought with them. You operate on a different level. While they're throwing punches in the dark, you're standing under the light with complete clarity. Their conflict has nothing to do with you. Their panic isn't yours to inherit. And their agenda can't touch someone who refuses to be dragged into emotional warfare. Your refusal to engage isn't surrender, it's elevation. You rise above the confrontation without ever lifting a hand, and that is what breaks them. Power expects resistance. It doesn't know how to handle indifference. You don't need to speak to shift the room. The second you walk in, every person inside recalculates their approach. That's influence. Not the artificial kind that relies on titles or roles, but the natural kind that grows from reputation, resilience, and undeniable strength. They adjust their tone. They adjust their strategy. They adjust their expectations. Because they know you don't respond to pressure, you respond to truth. And truth is something they haven't mastered. Your presence creates a new equation, one where they can no longer predict the outcome. And unpredictability is the one weakness power can't afford. There was a time they pushed you beyond your limits, knowing you didn't have the standing to push back. But those days are gone. Now, there's a line, your line, and they know better than to cross it. Not because you threatened them, not because you became aggressive, but because your growth drew a boundary around you, a boundary built from confidence, clarity, and conviction, a boundary that speaks louder than any confrontation. Crossing it would cost them more than they're willing to pay. So they don't. And the world that once tried to overwhelm you now steps back in caution, realizing that respect is the only way forward. They believed they could bury truth deep enough that it would never surface. But truth has a way of moving slowly, quietly, relentlessly. And now it follows you like a shadow they can't escape. You didn't ask for it. You didn't dig for it. You simply stood still long enough, strong enough, aware enough, and the truth found you. And once it found you, it changed everything. Truth empowers those who can handle it, and you've proven that you can. Now they know something that terrifies them. The truth is on your side, and nothing is more dangerous to those who built their world on secrets. People who once dismissed your insight now choose their words with care, because they finally understand. You don't miss anything. You hear the hesitation behind their statements. You feel the tension between their sentences. You see the intentions they try to hide. And that awareness makes them uncomfortable, very uncomfortable, because you're not just listening, you're understanding. And understanding gives you the kind of advantage no one can confiscate. They can hide documents, hide motives, hide agendas, but they can't hide themselves from someone who sees deeper than surface-level performances. And that's why they now speak like every word is a step on thin ice. There was a pattern they relied on, a predictable reaction they could exploit. Maybe it was your silence. Maybe it was your compliance. Maybe it was your desire to avoid conflict. Whatever it was, they built their entire control structure around it. Then one day, you broke the pattern. No apology, no explanation, just a clean break. And that single act dismantled their entire strategy. They can't control someone who doesn't respond the way they expect. They can't manipulate someone who sees the trap before stepping into it. You didn't just free yourself. You forced them to rewrite everything they once believed about you. And that rewrite is more powerful than any confrontation. Threats only work on people who doubt themselves, but you don't. Not anymore. Your confidence has become a shield, one they didn't expect and definitely don't know how to bypass. They try to intimidate you with consequences. They try to pressure you with urgency. They try to sway you with fear, but none of it lands. Because you've learned to separate what is real from what is manipulation, what is important from what is noise. And now, their threats echo in a room where you are the only one standing still, unshaken. Your calmness isn't passive. It's powerful. Powerful enough to silence everything that once kept you contained. They can replace workers. They can replace signatures. They can replace compliance. But the one thing they can't replace, the one thing that terrifies them, is your mind, your perspective, your judgment, your ability to see through the layers they hide behind. Your mind has become the key part of the equation, not because they want it, but because they need it. And needing someone gives them vulnerability they don't know how to handle. You don't need titles to have value. You don't need approval to have influence. The strength of your mind is more powerful than any position they could offer. And that's why it intimidates them. In every power struggle, someone writes the ending. And for the first time, that person is you. Not because you fought harder, but because you grew smarter. Not because you forced control, but because you reclaimed it. They came into your life believing they held all the authority. But chapter by chapter, moment by moment, you rewrote the story they tried to shape for you. And now, the ending belongs to you alone. Whether you walk away, push forward, expose the truth, or rewrite the rules entirely, that decision is yours, all yours. And that is the most powerful ending anyone could ever write.
Hello, my dear masterminds. They called them from every direction time could. Music measure. Generals whose maps had ended empires. Grand masters who could see 14 moves into a man's future. Economists who bent nations with equations. Music negotiators who turned enemies into signatures. Tacticians whose names were rumors and pseudonyms that had no doors. They arrived in silence, but the room filled with music, the kind of pressure that makes wood remember it was once a tree. Pages fluttered without wind. Torches steadied as if they too were listening. The rulers who summoned them wore relief like armor. Decades, the rulers thought. These minds have decades. There is no move that survives decades. Your move had survived decades. Your move had survived decades. That was the problem. A single decision, a pattern without pattern, a step that made the board behave. Music, like water. They had studied the recordings. They had slowed the frames. They had built models, and then built models to interrogate the models. Results disagreed with themselves. Every attempt to pin your move down failed. Pinholes left only air. Some said it was luck, but luck does not repeat this long. Others said it was bluff, but bluffs collapse when you look too closely and your move grew larger under scrutiny, like music a star mistaken for a candle until the sky goes dark. The chamber was stone and circle, the shape strategists. Music, prefer when pretending to be humble. Seats were set by rank. But rank felt shy in the presence of old victories. They did not introduce themselves. Victory is a language, and they were fluent in each other's accents. On the table lay boards of every discipline, chess and campaign charts, market curves and legislative flowcharts, ritual diagrams and contingency trees, music, each a theology of prediction. You entered without entourage, without announcement, without the courtesy of a herald. Presence did not knock, presence sat. Music. The chair did not protest. A historian cleared his throat and recited the dossier. Top strategists spent decades. Your move remains undefeated. The words were both confession and accusation. Music meant, we are here to end inevitability. You did not answer because inevitability does not attend debates. The first general placed a transparent grid over the board as if the grid, music, were sacred. A game theorist uncapped a pen the color of verdict. A master of timing watched the clock the way sailors watch tides. Fingers on rhythms only he could feel. A negotiator folded his hands into a cathedral and smirked. Certain that even gods must bargain. They agreed on rules because strategists worship rules the way kings worship ancestral lines. First principle, every move has a counter. Second, if there is no counter, redefine the move until one appears. Third, if redefinition fails, stall for time because time erodes miracles. They admired their own caution as if it were wisdom. They forgot that rules are bridges. Music, presence is shoreline. Bridges do not instruct oceans. They asked for a demonstration, your move, one more time on their terms. You obliged without flourish, a hand, a step, a decision that did not shout its cleverness. The boards did not crash, no pieces flew, nothing dramatic, only gravity changing its mind by a degree. The eye pretends not to see until an army discovers music. Its flank is yesterday, and the market wonders why numbers feel heavier. The room tried not to flinch. Flinching is bad optics among professionals, but several flinched anyway, as if a memory had just remembered them. They began their rituals. Freeze the frame, widen the frame, strip the context, add it back, simulate 10,000 universes, and ask each to vote. The simulations disagreed like brothers who swear they were at the same dinner. Probabilities jittered, certainty shrugged. A logician wrote, undefeated Nini, unbeatable, on a slate and underlined it twice to calm the room. The chalk broke on the third line. The room pretended not to notice that objects also have opinions. A woman whose victories were measured in trusses traced your decisions outline in the air and frowned when her finger returned blurred music, as if she had dipped it in a river. None of them had seen. The Grandmaster moved a knight to c6 in a game that was not on the table. He blinked as if catching himself trespassing in someone else's century. An economist whispered to his formula and got an answer that sounded like weather. A political architect drew a coalition and watched an invisible door close between two men who had shaken hands yesterday. Decades took their seats like dignitaries. Data poured its wine. History warmed the bread. Confidence licked its thumb and turned a page. you did nothing. Your move, music, did not wink or beckon. It existed with the quiet of stone, learning it is mountain. Someone laughed to bleed tension and found no wound. Someone coughed to prove breath and did not enjoy the proof. The clock kept time the way time keeps secrets. The youngest strategist, young in face, ancient in apprenticeship, finally said what the room refused. If a move is undefeated across decades, perhaps it is not a move, perhaps it is terrain. He met your gaze long enough to confirm that courage can be accurate. The elders bristled. Elders bristle when youth finds the sentence they needed. Terrain cannot be countered. It must be accepted or lost beneath a sea with other appointments. They reset the boards. Music. They sharpened their vows. They promised each other that today would be the day inevitability apologized. And yet beneath the table you could feel it. The floor learning a new balance. The air trying on a heavier coat. Their decades had entered the room with crowns polished. Music. Your move had entered with none, and already the crowns looked tired. They began the analysis with the reverence of music precision experts give to legends and the arrogance kings give to maps. First they froze your move frame by frame, as if slicing time into obedient moments would reduce inevitability to a manageable meal. The Grand Master narrated the playback with a calm that had frightened prodigies into retirement. He named squares you never touched, roads you never walked, variables you never acknowledged. The others nodded, relieved to music. Hear familiar music. Then the sound wavered. A night that should have threatened did not. A file that should have opened stayed shut, as if the hinge had chosen principle over music, physics. He rewound, slowed further, inserted markers like anchors, and the water kept being water. He hid his surprise behind a cough that no one believed. The game theorist took over, translating your decision into a tree of branches. Each branch a universe. Each leaf a forecast wearing numbers like armor. He asked the model to punish you for audacity. The model shrugged with the polite certainty of truth. He inverted payoffs, changed priors, widened confidence intervals until the chart looked like a galaxy viewed music through mist. The Nash equilibria flickered, tried to exist, failed politely. He, music, wrote undefeated, implies non-dominated, then crossed it out, then wrote terrain again, small, like a child carving initials on a desk because confession requires wood. The economist insisted that what cannot be modeled cannot be real, and what cannot be priced cannot matter. He fed data until his machine purred with smugness, the smugness of domesticated thunder. It returned a curve that dipped where markets never dip without scandal. He added oversight, incentives, penalties. The curve, music, bowed further, like a head remembering a promise it never made. His assistant, music, whispered that perhaps the utility function was wrong. He silenced the whisper with a glance and asked for more data. The way lost men ask for heavier maps. The negotiator repeated the mantra that every move can be bargained with if you find the appetite it hides. He listed your supposed appetites with a poet's confidence. Music, recognition, safety, leverage, closure, myth. He designed offers to tempt emperors and traps to humble saints. Music. He read them aloud in a voice that had talked rulers into surrender. Your move declined as if it had not heard him. He raised the offer, a cathedral of concessions, and watched gravity remain indifferent. He realized too late that presence does not eat. The timing master consulted instruments other men treat like relics. He said the undefeated move was a rhythm problem, and rhythm is mortal. He shifted tempo, trying to make your step late, early, offbeat, off balance. The room felt the second stretch obediently until they returned uncooperative to the rhythm you had brought with you. He looked at the clock, and the clock looked back with pity, the pity of granite. His fingers, trusted by calendars, searched the air for the hinge of the moment, music, and found only a door that opened for no one. The military architect erased, and music redrew the board as campaign from supply lines to morale, from seasons to rumor. He placed your decision inside a siege and fed it delay. The siege gained weight. He forced a retreat across a bridge, music, and found the river absent, replaced by a plain that had no patience for surrender. He ordered a feint to lure your center, and the feint returned, carrying his banner, music. He spoke less with every diagram, learning the dialect of bewilderment. Across the circle, the elder strategist with victories older than most nations leaned in. Music, convinced that pattern recognition is a sacrament that never fails its priests. He described your move as a composite of known gambits, a quilt stitched from ancient cunning. He smiled at his cleverness until he realized quilts warm, but climates endure. Music, he tried to pull at a seam and found none. He called it anomaly to protect his pride. The youngest called it law and lost nothing. They changed music, lenses, languages, and loyalties. They quoted philosophers about the primacy of counterplay and cited mathematicians about the music tyranny of limits. They invoked myths to tame the feeling that something more than calculation had entered the room. And then the first hairline fracture showed itself, not in the models, but in their posture. Shoulders that had been iron let themselves, music, be human. Pens that had never paused circled the same word twice. Two of them reached for water in unison, music, and looked startled to discover thirst. Certainty does not drink. Certainty allows others to sip and calls it mercy. They accused fatigue, music, and ordered fresh light. They blamed bias and swapped analysts like swapping masks at a masquerade that had outlasted its music. They took your move apart, the way boys take apart radios, unscrewing with faith that a song is hiding under every screw. They arranged the pieces on felt and heard silence that did not call itself music broken. An intern forgotten in a corner wrote quietly, "It is undefeated because it is uninterested in music winning." He did not show anyone. Interns keep notes for the future, notes that elders will later pretend they always knew. By midday, definitions began to turn on their owners. Countermeasure narrowed into excuse. Framework drifted into costume. Strategy, that beloved word, felt suddenly like furniture in a house. Discovering it was ship. Music. The historian tried to soothe the room with precedent. and found none that did not look small under the weight of now. He closed his book gently, the way one closes a friend's eyes. They asked you questions to perform power. You answered, music, with the same move, the refusal to be moved. Not stubbornness, music, geology, not defiance, weather. They circled back to first principles. They circled back to their first principles to harvest courage and found thin soil. One proposed a vote as though democracy could repeal gravity. Another suggested delay as though time would side with decades over moments. Time, polite, abstained. When they finally admitted diagrams no longer described the world, it felt like biting rind. The rind of a fruit they had sold by the crate but never tasted. Sower, clarifying, humbling. A grand master opened his hand above the board and did not drop the piece. The gesture was an encyclopedia, resignation without theater. The room inhaled, music, expecting grief or rage, would arrive with smaller and worse comprehension. You-Move was not beating them. Their idea of the board had been an old photograph. They wrote new rules on the margins, like survivors sketching maps from memory after the shoreline shifts. Not every dominance is contest. Some dominances are climate. Do not counter climate. Learn weather. Do not bargain with presence. Adjust rhythm. Decades nodded at the advice like widowers nod at condolences. Useful late. And still they insisted on one last sweep. An act of professional piety. Search for the exploitable mistake. The sweep returned with empty hands that smelled faintly of rain. The youngest met your eyes again and did not flinch. The elders looked away, each protecting a lifetime from the draft under the door. The fracture in their logic had widened into a window. Outside the window, the landscape declined to be a map. The room was no longer chorus. It was a choir of soloists. Realizing their songs could not meet in harmony, the Grand Master redrew the board a third time, his chalk hand unsteady. He moved tonight not to demonstrate, but to reassure himself that pieces still obeyed. It toppled mid-motion the way a dream trips on its own foot. He froze. The room pretended it had not seen, but the pretense cracked when the logician, pale now, muttered, "Music, impossible." A word professionals reserve for amateurs, music, not themselves. The negotiator tried to reset the atmosphere, smiling as though doubt were just another variable to be bartered. Every fortress has a gate, music, he declared. Even this moved, but the words did not land. They drifted like dandelions without wind. The economist whispered equations like prayers. His curve refused to bend. The mystic strategist closed his eyes and sought patterns in silence. The silence offered only silence. The council had grown addicted to its own certainty. Decades had been their fortress. They had believed music, time itself, was their ally. For time wrote us legends. Music. Yet your move did not erode. It grew sharper, clearer, stronger under their scrutiny, like stone under centuries of rain. It did not dissolve. It sculpted itself. Each analysis, each dissection, each arrogant attempt to reduce it left only one conclusion. Your move was not strategy at all. It was climate, and climate cannot be beaten. Climate can only be endured. One by one, the cracks widened. The historian who had never been at a loss for a cove's president flipped page after page and found no echo of you. The political architect scribbled coalition trees until his ink dried, then stared at blank parchment as if it might apologize. The strategist of command set down his cane, the gesture of a man realizing his foundation was sand, and the gesture of a man realizing his foundation was sand. Timing master, usually so serene, tapped his watch and whispered out of rhythm, as though rhythm had betrayed him personally. A murmur began at the edges of the circle. What if the move is undefeated because it does not play? They did not say it aloud. To admit that would mean their decades, their crowns, their reputations were exercises, music in performance against a stage that never cared. But their eyes betrayed them. Confidence was gone. Certainty was gone. All that remained was con. All that remained was presence, and presence was undefeated. It started with the Grandmaster's hands. They were famous hands, the kind that carved destinies across boards and left prodigies trembling in resignation. But now they trembled themselves. He tried to disguise it by adjusting a sleeve, by shuffling a pawn that did not need shuffling. Still the tremor spread, not just through fingers, but through the certainty of everyone watching. When the hands of inevitability falter, inevitability itself looks suspect. The economist was next. For decades he had promised that numbers never lie, that equations are the truest mirrors of reality. He summoned models thick with authority, each curve a monument to mastery. But when he input your move, the graph rippled like water, refusing to remember a stone. He adjusted variables, forced new assumptions, even bent the laws of scarcity themselves. Every result ended in blank space. His pen snapped between his fingers, music, ink spreading across the ledger. He tried to smile, but the corners of his mouth refused the order. The negotiator leaned forward, confident charm still his weapon. He had brought kings to their knees with contracts that looked like blessings. He spoke offers into the chamber, peace, power, praise, even prophecy. His words were designed to wrap around will, yet the air rejected them. Each phrase slipped to the floor like coins without mint. He raised the stakes, promising the unimaginable, bargaining as if bargaining itself were music, sacred. Still, your move refused to answer. The silence embarrassed him in a way defeat never had. He bowed his head, whispering to himself, "What do you trade with someone who does not need?" The strategist of command held out longest. His maps had painted continents in new colors. He summoned formations, counter-formations, feints, diversions, retreats. He moved his cane across the table as if directing invisible forces. Music. Yet with each plan, the pieces moved against him. A flank refused to hold. A bridge dissolved into music, mist. Morale turned to hesitation without cause. He struck the cane down as though volume could rewrite law. The cane split at the base and the echo mocked him. A general without ground is only a man in uniform. Music. The mystic tried her. Charms, weaving incantations of balance and symmetry. Her voice, once enough to steady storms of men, music, quivered mid-syllable. She demanded silence to bend, but silence only grew heavier, pressing her words flat before they left her lips. She closed her eyes to hide the tears forming, not of sorrow, but of recognition. "It isn't a move," she whispered. "It's the room itself." The judge attempted a verdict, pounding his staff like thunder. His voice rang hollow. The law he spoke fractured under its own sound. The scholar wrote furiously, documenting each failure, but his ink bled across the parchment until the letters blurred together like confessions, drunk on rain. Domino after domino, collapse after collapse. Not dramatic, not explosive, subtle, inevitable. The surgeon of minds who had once cut men open with language sat in silence, realizing words themselves had retired. The merchant flipped through ledgers, searching for debt, profit, leverage, anything to own you, music with. Every page turned blank in his hands, and the youngest strategist, who had spoken earlier of terrain, leaned back, music, eyes wide. He understood now. It was not that their decades had been wasted. It was that their decades had mistaken themselves for eternity. Your move revealed the truth. Decades are sand, presence is mountain. When one master breaks, you blame fatigue. When two falter, you suspect coincidence. When all collapse in sequence, you face law, and law does not apologize. The rulers watching from their throne shifted uneasily. They had promised victory, expected brilliance, demanded supremacy. Instead, they witnessed unraveling. Whispers ran among them. Is the move truly undefeatable, or is our entire world an illusion dressed as strategy? By the time the last domino fell, there was no debate left. 12 strategists, decades deep in triumph, sat hollow, their crowns of mastery reduced to dust. No wind bothered to carry, and still, music, you had not moved. The rulers had summoned these minds like storms, expecting lightning to strike in their favor. Yet, now they shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Decades of certainty cracked before their eyes. The Grandmaster's trembling hand, the economist's snapped pen. Music, the negotiator's hollow offers, the general's fractured cane. Each collapse struck not just the 12, but the throne itself. A king known, for his cruelty leaned forward, veins tightening across his temple. "Explain," he demanded of the scholar, whose quill still scratched desperately at blurred parchment. The scholar stammered. "The move, it doesn't yield to analysis. It behaves not as choice, but as law." His voice faltered on the word law, for he had always sworn that law belonged to rulers. Now he realized law was older than crowns. Another ruler laughed sharply to cover his unease. "Nonsense. Every code can be broken, every fortress breached. Try again." But his laughter rang false, a brittle sound that echoed against the walls and returned as mockery. His music. Peers did not laugh with him. They had seen too much to pretend. Whispers grew among attendants lining music, the chamber. If the 12 cannot break it, who can? Servants exchanged uneasy glances. Guards gripped their steel tighter as if metal could shield them from silence, and outside rumors already stirred that the Council of Brilliance had been brought low, that decades of mastery had collapsed in a single afternoon. Panic does not wait for proclamations. Panic writes its own dispatch. The strategist of time stood at last, desperate to salvage dignity. He declared, "Even if your move cannot be countered, time itself will erode it. Nothing survives forever." Yet, as he spoke, the torches flickered. The clock hands ticked once and then hesitated. A single heartbeat of stillness enough for arrogance to wither. Music. Every witness felt it. Even time seemed unwilling to side against you. He sat down in silence, no one daring to applaud. The rulers began to quarrel among themselves. Some insisted the strategists had failed out of weakness. Others whispered treachery, music, sabotage, curses, but their arguments rang hollow. For every man in the room had felt it. Your move was not resisting, it was music. Not even fighting, it simply was. And presence that simply is cannot be countered, cannot be bargained with, cannot be undone. The serpent strategist finally broke her silence, her voice thin and trembling. "We are not analyzing a move," she confessed. "We are standing in terrain." Her words hung heavy in the chamber. The rulers shifted again, realizing what it meant. Terrain does not lose. Music may survive it, adapt to it, endure it, but you cannot erase it. One of the younger rulers, less hardened by years of arrogance, "Music," whispered the thought the others feared most. "If decades crumble, music, hear what of our thrones?" No one answered. For thrones are built on the illusion that strategies last forever, that mastery is eternal. And here, before their eyes, eternity had bent to silence. The council chamber had begun with confidence filled with the scent of superiority. Now it reeked of doubt. Decades had not just collapsed from the hands of the 12. They collapsed from the pillars of the rulers themselves. And doubt, once it enters a throne room, never leaves empty-handed. And through it all, you had not spoken a word.